Dun, 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 dun. Oh. Well, welcome to this week's special edition of our cultural catch-up, and we're concentrating on the massive franchise which is Mission Impossible. Joining me is my special covert spy, David Morricone. You know, I know what you've been doing behind you.
Sharp.
I know what you've been doing behind that desk. You've been secretly looking at the history of this franchise, which has been going on for now 30 years. Just so you must have started watching the first one with that thumb in your mouth, David.
Well, not quite, but nearly. So yeah, no, I before the release of Final Reckoning, I did put myself through more than 900 minutes of the whole franchise. I rewatched the whole thing from 1996, Mission Impossible by Brian De Palma, all the way to 2023's Dead Reckoning Part 1. And it is a special franchise to the extent that it has bucked the franchise trend. It's one of these kind of series of films that is this almost blockbuster anomaly to the extent that ever since its beginning, it's gone from strength to strength. As opposed to several other series where there are dips. Now, granted, Mission Impossible 2, the John Woo film, was a little bit of a disappointment. But if you hire John Woo, you get a John Woo film.
Certainly do. Lots of doves.
Yeah, doves flying everywhere where they should be singed pigeons instead. But for some reason, they're impervious to fire. And essentially, this is like a franchise that has, over the years, over 3 decades, really kind of not faced many diminishing returns. Except in 2023 with Dead Reckoning Part 1, which we saw together, and it was bloated, it was weirdly underwhelming, and it represented a little bit of for me at least, a bit of a franchise low.
It was memorable for perhaps all the wrong reasons, I would say.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Now we come to the Final Reckoning. It was originally supposed to be Dead Reckoning Part 2. They've renamed it as the Final Reckoning, and it has been billed as the final installment of Mission Impossible, where Ethan Hunt comes back and finishes off the story that started with Dead Reckoning Part 1.
So, you know, you've seen it, and I know you've looked at each one in the franchise very, very carefully. So how does this one rate compared with the rest?
Rock bottom.
I need you to trust me. One last time.
It is all over the shop. It's an absolute mess of a film, and it gives me absolutely no pleasure to say that because, like I said, I really enjoy the way that directors over the years have put their individual stamp on the film. So you had Brian De Palma doing an espionage film. Then you had John Woo, and it went all over the shop as well, but it was deliriously entertaining. It was a very kind of early 2000s films, loads of shiny leather jackets, shades, you know, explosions in the background. And then you had J.J. Abrams coming in and kind of giving it a little bit of a reboot or a rejuvenation. Brad Bird afterwards for Ghost Protocol, which was a fantastic adventure. Yeah. And then you had Christopher McQuarrie who came in and who really kind of tweaked the formula and got it to where it needed to be with Rogue Nation and Fallout, which in my mind is the franchise high in 2018. And now you have the Final Reckoning, which suffers from the same problems as Dead Reckoning, which is very exposition heavy. It's very clumsy. The script is just all over the shop. So essentially you pick up where it left off, where there is the entity, this AI parasite which distorts the truth, which sows seeds of division, stokes fear.
If we want to bring the world back from the brink, we have to deal with him. Should he choose to accept?
Really, the concept is excellent because it does speak to a time. It does speak to kind of to very, very topical fears. And at the beginning of the Final Reckoning, we hear about fanatics who are pledging their devotion to their digital overlord. And you're like, brilliant, go with that. Go with truth distortion, with post-truth, with governments being divided. But no, instead, it completely throws everything at the script, and essentially the gaping digital sphincter that is the entity is both doomsayer manipulator of doomsday, and essentially is you have 72 hours to save the world from complete nuclear annihilation. And this is the franchise forgetting what makes it so good at the beginning, which is espionage films, but, obviously, which is, some of the action, some of the stunts, some of the stakes are completely ludicrous, but you could suspend your disbelief because it was so deliriously entertaining. There is a lunatic reliance on flashbacks. You get these little snippets of the previous films because this film has been built up as it's all led up to this. But it hasn't. It almost retcons and tries to kind of link the previous films to this one. And you're just like, why? There's absolutely no need to do so. But in doing that, it really kind of puts the character of Ethan Hunt at the center and mythologizes him. There's dialogue, cringe-worthy dialogue that says, oh, it's been 35 years, Mr. Hunt. You were always the best of men in the worst of times. You are the chosen one. That is a line in the film. And you're just like, I'm not watching a Mission Impossible film. I'm stuck in the Matrix. There's, now Ethan Hunt is no longer a special agent for the IMF. It's a messianic figure. And it's so dull because the first half of the film is like peddling through hummus because there is so much exposition. It is so deadly just contrived. And the worst part is with all these flashbacks in The Final Reckoning is every time I saw like snippets from the previous film, I was like, that was good. That was a really, really good film. That was fun. And it just reminded me of films that I would rather watch as opposed to be stuck in The Final Reckoning. And another problem that it retains from Dead Reckoning Part 1 is not only very, very clumsy dialogue and a bloated script, but also just characters. I mean, the cast do admirably well. They are really, really good. They're giving it socks. But there's a problem, is that the villain, played by Esai Morales, who plays a character called Gabriel, is so underwhelming. He's a charisma vacuum in this. And he was that in Dead Reckoning Part 1. And in The Final Reckoning, it's the same thing. And a film, especially an action thriller, is only as good as its villain. And when you've had in previous films, Philip Seymour Hoffman in Mission Impossible 3, Sean Harris in Rogue Nation and Fallout, who were fantastic villains and who gave the series a sense of menace, here you're just like, okay, you're a silver fox in a plane. Good for you.
What exactly is your plan?
It came to the point, I was so bored by this film that at one point there's another useless callback from the first film, which leads us to this isolated cabin. And this cabin is gorgeous. It's got wooden beams. It's got fantastic shelving. There's books everywhere. There's a little fireplace. And this place, because of the narrative, I won't spoil it, I will spoil it, goes up in flames at one point. And I was so just uninterested in this bloated narrative that I was just like, what about the cabin? What happens to the cabin? These two people were living their lives, their best lives in an absolute gorgeous chalet, and you're just like, you've ruined it for them. What about the cabin?
Tom Cruise doing what he can for set designers around the world.
I mean, it's not his fault. Tom Cruise, as per usual, is great. He does the stunts, and there are plenty of really, really good stunts in this, as per the rest of the franchise. But even they feel bizarrely a little bit underwhelming. I was bored, Tokes. To be bored in a Mission Impossible film, I mean, it's unforgivable.
Sounds incredible, and you're making it sound like a real snore fest. Where does this, therefore, if this is like at the bottom of the Mission Impossible rankings, what does this say about the future of the franchise? Tom Cruise has, it's been questioned so many times about the future. Could you see him coming back?
It's an interesting question. I mean, in recent interviews, he said, he's been a bit cagey, obviously, because it's billed as the final reckoning. It's a little bit of a marketing campaign to say, this is the last one. It's all been leading up to this. If you enjoyed the previous ones, you have to see this one. And really, for me, no, you don't have to see this one. For me, the franchise high was 2018 Fallout, and even that had just a better ending. To answer your question, this feels like it could be the last one. It is purely because you can't top the stakes. Nuclear annihilation, it felt like a Michael Bay film. It felt at times like even a film directed by McG, which is possibly the lowest compliment I can pay anything. Because this has absolutely gone to a whole other level, it's just, no. You stop it there, it's done. But really, realistically, what they're going to do is wait a few years and reboot the franchise. And the only way they can do this is by going back to the espionage roots with, a new team, maybe Tom Cruise coming back as this kind of elder spy who plays the father figure.
Is there an heir apparent within the films?
Well, not really. At first, it was going to be Jeremy Renner, who came, I think, in Ghost Protocol and who was in the latter films. But here he's completely absent, and no, there isn't. And in this case, there shouldn't be. It should be a brand new team. Tom Cruise will probably come back as the Jim Phelps kind of character for this new team in a few years' time. So there is that. But the issue is, and this is a mild spoiler, it has to be said, is that Final Reckoning just really lacks the conviction of its beliefs. If it's all been leading up to this, and we mentioned the Bond franchise, that under Daniel Craig, the last Bond film, No Time to Die, did this spectacular thing of let's kill off James Bond. It's never been done before.
A bold move.
A very bold move, and it kind of worked. And the thing is that here, there is a sequence in this film, again, mild spoiler, is that at one point, a parachute malfunctions. And you're just like, this is it. He's going to fall to his death, and his last moment is to put the flingamajig in the thingamabob and save the world, just at the last moment, and then splat. But no, he shows up at the end. Everything's fine. He's, they've trapped the AI in a little glowing box. And it's just like, well, yeah, isn't Tom Cruise, isn't Ethan Hunt great?
Sure.
And yeah, so it does leave the door open, a little bit depressingly so. But it has to be said, this series of films, the Mission Impossible IP, needs the pants down spanking that Jason Bourne and Mission Impossible, ironically enough, gave the Bond franchise to basically just go, you've gone over the deep end, lads. You can't just have, Pierce Brosnan kind of kite surfing over a digital wave. You can't have Tom Cruise just, miraculously surviving being in the Mariana Trench and then, no consequences at all. Here, you need to go back to something that is rooted in something that is believable and then stretch credibility. But because it is rooted in real stakes, you feel something. I felt nothing here.
Okay, well, Mission Impossible seems to be a flop. You've made that very clear, David, our super spy, taking that mission on. See us out.
Right. This video will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Seriously, go. I've laced it with C4. Go.